welcome to this week's Motor Week.
Yes, now Switzerland may not have a motor industry of its own, but every year it plays host to the most prestigious motor show of the year.
And we're here to bring you all the news from the 1999 Geneva Motor Show.
Every motor show, wherever it is in the world, has a big story. And the big story here at Geneva this year is this. It's a Bentley, unveiled to the world's motoring press today to amazement. And it's not just the car that's the story either. Halfway along it nestles, or I don't know if I should say nestles really about something so huge, the engine. It's a V16, 8-litre, over 620 brake horsepower. It's a monster of a thing, and every bit a proper Bentley engine.
In fact, if we're to get our letters of the alphabet right, that glorious engine isn't a V, it's a W16. It uses technology similar to that found in the W12 engine used by Volkswagen in their supercar. And looking at the Bentley, it must be said that it does have something, well, rather European about it. Bentleys traditionally have 25 feet long bonnets with the engine nestling in there, not in the middle. In fact, you could say it looks rather as though somebody has taken a Bentley grille and hammered it crudely into the front end of pretty much any European supercar.
We had this ambition that if we wanted to push the boundaries of Bentley further than they've been pushed in recent years at least, then something like this was going to be a good thought provoker and would give us the views of people, whether they be journalists, customers, aficionados for the mark, as to whether this is the sort of direction we could go. Now, bear in mind that W.O. Bentley made the name for the company in the 1920s and 30s with supercars at the time. We were winning Le Mans 5 times in the 20s, so it's not exactly a departure for us. It's perhaps going back to something we've done before, but not in this guise, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you certainly can't go too far down the tradition line because it's mid-engine. Why did you go mid-engine with this concept?
I guess when you think supercar, you think mid-engine. It needn't be, but that tends to be the recognised configuration. This is a concept car, so it's unlikely level to go into production anyway. So if we did decide to do something, it could be in any different direction. It wouldn't have to be mid-engine.
The eagerly awaited launch to the world's press of this car and of this engine, you said that this is a statement of intent. Now, it could be said that it's quite a European thing to do, to put the engine in the middle. I mean, are we going to see more of a move towards a European kind of product, something less idiosyncratic than in the past?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, you've got a very big engine there. And don't forget, this concept car does two things. Yes, it's a statement of intent for Bentley as a mark. It's also a test bed for the engine itself. It's the introduction of this 16-cylinder, 8-litre engine. We haven't made an 8-litre engine for a long time, not since the 1930s. So it is a test bed for that engine, and the engine will probably go into a future generation of mainstream Bentley products. So replacement for some of the existing 4- and 2-door cars that we have in a number of years' time. So the engine is far more likely to make it into production than the car will.
And the engine is very much a Bentley product. You've described it has certain characteristics that people now associate with the Bentley engine.
That's right. I mean, let's be clear, it couldn't have happened without the support of our colleagues at Volkswagen, where the engine has been produced. It follows a family of engines that they've been working on. They've not long ago introduced an 18-cylinder engine for the Bugatti Concept, which is a different makeup to this. This is along the same lines as the W12. I won't try and explain the engineering aspects of it because I'd make a fool of myself, but as you say, what we did set out to do from the very beginning of this development program was to produce an engine with them that had characteristics that a Bentley owner would recognise. Lots of torque, very low down in the rev range, so you've got that seamless tidal wave of power right the way through the rev range.
It could be said as well that this is a good time for raising the image of Bentley. You're deliberately trying to push Bentley at the moment.
We are. I mean, when Volkswagen bought the company, they knew what our 10-year product plan was, and they obviously bought into that by buying the company. We wanted to say, well, where are we going beyond that? And this is why in the very earliest days of our relationship with them, we put some ideas to them which they took to their heart, and they said, well, which of these various ideas would you like to pursue? And we said this one, and that happened to be just the one they'd like to pursue as well. So it's a statement of intent in that way, as you said before, in that we think that we can push the parameters out further beyond our live product plan, if you like, to see where we could go beyond that.
When the new BMW 3 Series was launched last summer, many people said that it didn't look too different to the previous model. Well, that may have been the case, but in all the ways that mattered, this was a new and very much improved vehicle. And the same seems to be true for the 3 Series Coupe, which has just been unveiled here at Geneva. It doesn't look too different to the old model, but it's certainly far more stylish, it's more refined, and it promises to be an absolutely cracking drive. The lineup features a 2.5 litre 323 and a 2.8 litre 328. A 1.9 litre 318 will join them early in the next millennium. Inside there's far more room for driver and passengers, and there are better levels of equipment than with the last model. BMW this time have gone all out to build on the sporting drive, and every model now comes with sport suspension as standard. And another new thing is the CI badge you'll find here on the back. Now this is a throwback to the BMW CS and CSL Coupes of the 60s and the 70s. Now it is of course known as a car for the real driving enthusiasts. It's a sporting drive. Is that very much the case with this new model as well?
Yes, it's a mixture. I mean, we call it an athletic car, and it's athletic in its looks. It has slightly stretched coupe lines. But to drive, it has, for example, it has a sportier suspension as standard. It has a much higher standard specification. So although we don't call it a special equipment or SE model, in terms of equipment, it is really an SE model. It mixes luxury with sportiness.
If you're a fan of Ford cars, you probably hanker after those halcyon days of the 1980s and the much-loved, much-demised Sierra Cosworth. There's certainly never been a car since, really, from the Ford range. However, the Mondeo is having a go because this is the new ST200. It gets the 2.5 litre V6 engine, it gets an increase in power from 170 to 205 brake horsepower, it gets tuned suspension for the European market, and the usual alloys, skirts and spoilers. One thing it isn't, though, is a real Cosworth, but there is a real Cosworth upstairs. And here it is, our first look here in Europe at the Focus Cosworth Concept Car. Let's hope it goes into production because it's an astonishing vehicle, that's for sure. It's inspired by the rally car that Colin McRae drives in the World Championship this year. It's powered by a 2-litre turbocharged and intercooled engine, which Ford say will produce over 200 brake horsepower, that's for sure. It will be astonishingly quick. Let's hope they make it. Right to the chairman of Ford, right to your MP, and demand that the Cosworth Focus goes into production.
Mini MPV, mini people carrier, whatever you want to call it, this is another one from Mazda, the Premacy. And the whole idea of a multi-purpose car, which is what it is, usually means something becomes bland, diluted, boring. One look at the front of this, and it ain't. You can definitely see something of the 626 in the shape of the grille and in the shape of the headlights, but they've been given an aggressive little spin, particularly with this deep front spoiler and this extra little hole here with the grille in it. It does look pretty aggressive. That is until we take a look down the side. The idea of a medium or small car that has a multi-purpose feel to it was first introduced by Renault with the Scenic, based on their successful Megane, and it did incredibly well for Renault, since which that sector that was invented has grown to become a pretty fiercely competitive thing in its own right. There's been quite a few arriving. Vauxhall are in there, most of the major manufacturers are. It's interesting though that perhaps the nearest competitor for this, certainly in terms of looks, came from Mitsubishi when they launched the Space Star. Now they said, no, it's not a mini MPV, it's an ordinary saloon car with a high roofline. Mazda is saying, oh yes, it is a mini MPV, their version, but it's got a low floor line. That's probably got good news when it comes to driving the thing from a handling point of view, because it should mean a lower centre of gravity. But to offer anything genuinely of use to us, it's got to be more than taking an ordinary small, low and medium family hatch and inflating it, be it up or down. And it's when you look inside that this thing actually has got something to take for itself. Straight away you can see the boot is extremely clear. There's a massive load bay. It's nice and low to get into. There's also, and I like little things like this, a nice little storage tray here. And you can see we've got 3 seats in the rear. They're all individual split, fold and tilt, which gives it the versatility that a car like this really needs to justify its title.
Now, if you drooled over the Audi TT, and let's face it, who in their right minds hasn't, then prepare for your jaw to drop, because I reckon this is the most desirable set of 4 wheels around. It's just been unveiled here at the show, and it's the Audi TT Roadster. Just take a look at it, it's absolutely gorgeous. The TT Roadster will be powered by the same engine that you'll find in the Coupe. It's a 1.8 litre producing 180 brake horsepower. There's also a turbocharged version that will give you a beefy 225 brake horsepower. 0 to 60 will take just 6.7 seconds with the turbo and just a second more for the basic 1.8 version. Inside, the only difference between the interior of the Roadster and that of the Coupe is this cross-stitching here on the seats. Everything else is really very similar. It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it looks so retro with all the dials and all the chrome. And you know, when you look at Roadsters, so many of them look fantastic from the outside, but when you get inside, they're very bland and boring. And the TT just stands out for the thought that's been put in here. You're going to have a very hard job prizing me out of this shine to retro chic. So how many pennies do you need to save between now and the autumn when it goes on sale? Well, 28 grand will get you the 180 brake horsepower version, or 31,500 will get you the 225. But the bad news is that the order books are officially closed and the waiting list is 2 years. Oh well, that's that one off the list then.
Well, that's all in part one of Motor Week. Lots more from Geneva coming up after the break.
Mitsubishi are one of the latest manufacturers to team up with the Italian styling guru Pinin, who of course are responsible for some absolutely gorgeous looking cars. Now what they've done is blended Mitsubishi's off-road experience, taken their excellent 1.8 GDI engine and added some of that Italian flair and design to come up with this, the Pajero Pinin. Mitsubishi are keen to point out that the Pajero Pinin is not just another fashionable four-wheel drive car that really is no good apart from on the streets of Chelsea. This is a real off-roader. It's really recognisable as a member of the Shogun family, which of course is renowned for being at home driven on or off-road in most countries of the world. Now, much of the Shogun's success and reputation comes from its rally-developed and really proven technologies that make driving effortless in it off-road. The Pajero Pinin follows this philosophy. It's no watered-down four-wheel drive look-alike. It may be compact enough for city use, but that makes no difference to its countryside off-road capabilities. The Pinin may well be a true off-roader and you might be able to plough through muddy fields in it, but I can't imagine that you'll want to stick your dirty wellies in here afterwards. Just take a look at it. There's silver everywhere, silver leather. It's more like the interior of a spaceship than that of a four-wheel drive. I can't imagine that it's very home county somehow, can you? Inside and out, whether you like it, you can't deny that it's eye-catching. It's certainly very different to Pininfarina's usual work. It'll be up against things like the Toyota RAV4 and Land Rover's Freelander. When it goes on sale in the UK, which will be roughly the middle of next year, it may not be called the Pajero Pinin. What Mitsubishi are doing right now is clinicking the name to see what we make of it in England. Whatever it's called though, it should cost around 16 grand, and it's not a bad little package.
There is a brace of little French otaches here at the Geneva show. This one is a fresh take on the same idea. It's Peugeot's 206 GTI, their answer of course to Renault's new hot Clio. And from the outside, it looks, if anything, sharper than the Clio option with its distinctly sharper lines, even though the touches it's been given to GTI it up are fairly minimal. There's a few little spoilered bits at the back and down the sides. Looks like the arches are slightly wider and there's slightly bigger alloy wheels. In fact, it was recently voted the most beautiful car of the year in France. But then, they are French, and so's the car. It's only when you look under the surface do you realise that, if anything, the 206 is a softer option. The engine puts out only 136 brake compared to over 170 for the Renault. And when you're inside, it seems to be leaning decidedly more towards comfort. The seats are definitely sporting and they're quite supportive and they have this nice suede feel material and plenty of leather, but they're definitely more of a comfort-oriented thing than a pure sport thing. There are some nice sport touches around the cabin though. I like the gear lever, I love the drilled alloy pedals, they're absolutely fantastic, and the handles here to open and close the door. But one thing I've never understood about the Peugeot 206, and I can't forgive them for it, and I can't understand it, is this elephant hide material they appear to have used here, this plastic with this print like an elephant sat on it whilst it wasn't quite set. Other than that, this is a very nice place to be.
Lotus is a car company that a lot of people have good things to say about these days, and that is great for the British car industry. Despite the aging Esprit, it's still a cracking car and still keeps coming out in new versions. And there's also, of course, the Lotus Elise we first saw 2 years ago. Well, now Lotus have gone one better with the Elise and introduced the 111S. It is a cracking car. It has more horsepower, 143 brake horsepower to be precise, and Richard Hammond took it for a drive.
Lotus's gorgeous little Elise first sprang onto the market a couple of years ago, something like that, since which it has exploded with success for the company. They only anticipated building 750 a year. They're already building about 3,000 of these gorgeous little critters every single year. It's a measure of the scale of that success for Lotus that the building I'm standing in front of today is a technical centre. It's enormous, as yet empty, but very soon very full. Lotus are doing very nicely indeed, thank you very much. And so we come to the newly revised Elise. Well, the changes to the exterior are minimal, but it's a kind of minimalistic car. That's what you'd expect, so subtle things. The headlamps are faired in. It's quite a complicated thing to make this. The indicators are now a smoked finish. And if we wander to the back, the anoraks will notice that in future the new Elise has a little black strip here. That's because it's some boring, tedious, probably European legal thing. It's to do with the fact that it has a new rear wheel that's slightly wider and a new specially designed rear tyre. Then at the rear we've got a little wing here, which I'm told does work very well, and that's a good job because there is more power. In the middle here, nestling away, it's got the engine it was always supposed to have, everybody said, the VVC. That means more power, and that power is put to the rear wheels through a new close ratio gearbox, all of which means I'm sick of talking to you and I want to drive it, because that's what it's all about once you've got in. Next time anybody you're talking to who owns one of these things starts bragging about its capabilities, believe them. Believe everything. They might be the biggest pub bore you've ever met, but everything they say is true. It really does corner like nothing else you'll ever drive. It stops. The stopping power is unbelievable. And it really is all about communicative controls, and that sounds really, but it is. Everything about the car talks to you. The steering is as direct as it could possibly be without being heavy. The brakes are precisely the same. They're non-servo. And the more you apply the pressure, it sounds obvious, the more it'll brake for you. But until you've really felt a proper braking system like this, you don't know what it's like. It's an absolutely astounding car to drive. Got this new model, we've had a quick look at the changes. Why these changes? What are you trying to do to it?
We're trying to open the market up. We've had a lot of our present customers saying, I'd just like a bit more power. So we've increased the power, we've changed the gear ratios, so they're a more sporty, if you can believe that, a more sporty type gear ratios, which is very, very well suited to the engine characteristics. And we've made subtle other changes throughout the car and made a new model.
Having said that, we've been tootling around the track at some speed with you driving, and I've had a little blast on the roads myself. I mean, we are talking about a pretty serious tool for racing, but you can use it on the roads, and it isn't frightening. You don't sit in this thing and think, it's a monster, it's going to hurt me.
No, we have a little phrase which says fun at 50. And that's no reference to my age, it's just it's a reference to the fact that it can be just fun driving at 50 miles an hour in a queue of traffic.
Every time I've opened the door in my day with this car, I've just smiled and felt happy. And that is just, for me, what the car's about. Happiness. It looks quite happy, it drives, it just makes you smile. I congratulate Lotus on building something that is more Lotus than anything else could possibly be. They really have epitomised everything Lotus in this car. The developments are definitely worthwhile. Subtle though they may be, they do make a big difference to the little car. And I wish them all the very best. We congratulate them on the fact that they're selling so many of them, outstripping even their expectations, and I'm sure they will do so in the future. At what? Under 30,000, well under £30,000. What can you buy for more fun?
This wonderfully wacky little car proves beyond any doubt that you don't have to be big to be beautiful to catch the eye at a motor show. This stand has been inundated with people all day, and you can see why. It's a very eye-catching vehicle that's different. It's a concept car built by Opel, but the good news is that Vauxhall will also get the use of this car if it goes into production. Opel have actually been working with Suzuki developing this car, and that should give you a big clue as to its whereabouts. It's actually based on the Postman Pat style Wagon-R of Suzuki that's already on sale. Big difference is Opel have made this into a rather fun vehicle that looks as if it's something you'd want to drive rather than something you'd be very embarrassed to drive. Concept A could actually be the world's smallest people carrier. It's an incredibly versatile little machine inside. It can take anything from people to 2 huge mountain bikes. It does that because the back seat folds entirely into the floor, as does the front passenger seat. So it really is a functional vehicle as well. And there's acres of room inside. When you look at the outside, you think there's not much room. It's huge inside. You could wear a top hat if you wanted to inside there. It's powered by a very economical little 1-litre engine that's at present in the Corsa. It's got slightly more power to it. It could go on sale within the next year and a half. Vauxhall, Opel and Suzuki are going to decide within 6 months whether to put it into production. If it does, expect it to be priced just beneath the Corsa, maybe around about £7,000, to rival models like the Ford car Sierra Rosa. I have a feeling that Vauxhall could put this into production, and it could be going around our cities very shortly.
Well, it's been a fairly quiet show for Mercedes here in Geneva. We've already seen the new S-Class and the CLK Cabriolet, to name just a few of their recent cars. But they have saved one thing up for us, and that's the new S-Class Coupe. It's called the CL Coupe now. You get a choice of the CL 500 or the CL 600. That 600 with a V12 engine produces 367 brake horsepower and apparently uses 20% less fuel than the outgoing S-Class coupes. It also has what Mercedes describe as a revolutionary new ride system called active body control. A control so supple you'd hardly realise you were moving. Prices? Well, it goes on sale in the UK later this year. Expect to pay at least a starting price of £80,000. Inside, it's all wood and leather and every possible gadget you can imagine. And I, for one, think it's stunning.
Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's show.
But there's loads more to see here at the Geneva Motor Show.
So make sure you join us next week on Motor Week, and we'll see you then.